Welcome to Brew Talks, our virtual meetup series presented by Dogfish Head and sponsored by the Reyes Beer Division and Brew One by John I. Haas. My name is Justin Kendall, and I am the editor of Brewbound. And I am oh so lucky to have my co-host with me today, superstar reporter Jess Infante. What's up, Jess?
Nothing, Justin. How are you? Hi from our very fancy studio.
I know, you're live from Newton.
I am live in Newton, and this is the first time I've been in the office since March of 2020. So fortunately, everybody, was happy to see me.
Well,
but really nice.
I'm happy to see you too. And we've got an hour and 45 minutes or so to bring everybody two big conversations on the latest of what's going on in the beer biz. One on how the summer selling season is going so far with an eye on the fall. And a second on the future of the American Craft Beer Bar, which you want to stay tuned for. But if you happen to miss it, all this will be available on demand at brewbound.com. So another thing I want to get out of the way before we start here is a big shout out to Zoe Licata, Brewbound's editorial assistant. She's doing a great job covering the industry. She's new and she's rocking it. And, she's going to be going on the road with us when we do this live and in person at CBC in September. So stay tuned for that. We're going to have more information in the coming weeks, but we got to get going here because as Jerry Reed said, we got a long way to go and a short time to get there. So we are in the midst of the oh so important summer selling season. We've got tough comps. Scans haven't looked great, but that's only part of the story. So let's get the real scoop from our all-star panel during this all-star week. Here to discuss today is Sam Calagione, the co-founder of Dogfish Head. Thanks for being here, Sam.
Excited to be with you guys, Justin and Jess. We're super proud to be the longtime brewery sponsor of Brew Talks. I really enjoy the process leading up to these biannual events that we do, and we ideate on what we think our industry wants to hear about, what we want to talk about together. And we really did put together two dream team panels today. So I'm excited to be along for the ride with everyone today.
Also, we've got along for the ride is Danelle Cosmal, the VP of Beverage Alcohol Practice at Nielsen IQ. Thanks for being here, Danelle.
Hi, thanks guys. Thanks for having me. Thanks for having me to be a part of this awesome all-star panel too.
We love having you here, so you're welcome back anytime. We also have Jason Milburn, Director of Alcohol Beverage for Kroger. Thanks for being here, Jason.
Yes, good afternoon. Thanks for having me. Very excited to be on the panel here.
And one hell of a wine collection.
It's a work in progress.
Last but not least, we have one of the biggest brains in the beer industry. We have Bart Watson, the Chief Economist for the Brewers Association. Thanks for being here, Bart.
Thanks for having me back, Justin. Always great to be on Brew Talk, so happy to be here.
So let's get started here. Danelle, let's set the stage a little bit. We gave a little bit of a preview, but what we're seeing so far this year, the off-premise comps are admittedly tough up against last year in which nearly all of the purchasing shifted away from the on-premise and into the off-premise channel. Now bars and restaurants are back. The scans are showing a lot of red. Against that backdrop, what story is the scan data telling you so far, and what's the story we should be telling everyone?
Well, Justin, you started with that of scans are in the red right now. I mean, trends are in the red, and it's the most important part of that is that's what we expected, and that's what we want to keep reminding everyone of that. Last year, when so much shut down in the on-premise, that volume shifted to the off-premise. That's why we saw such spikes in sales in the off-premise, given those massive skyrocketing numbers in the off-premise because that volume shifted. We have really tough comps, like we mentioned, to work with. So we expected trends that would be declining around this time in off-premise. So that's why we've continued to compare back to 2 years ago and using 2019 a little bit as a benchmark. So in that case, we have everything up. And in some cases, everything's up across alcohol. Spirits is up double digits, nearly 30% still. Beer is lagging a little bit. So beer, FMB, seltzer, cider category is lagging a little bit. It's up by about 8%. But that said, we're still above what we would typically see in off-premise sales.
So Bart, you've written for the BA's website that negative scans might not always be a terrible thing for craft brewers. Craft shares remain pretty much stable and draft is coming back, but we know it's not often that craft breweries pop up in scan data. So how would you describe the year so far in craft beer?
Yeah, I mean, I think we can separate the year to the first 3 months, which largely, again, were pre those big comps that Danelle just talked about. Then the next couple of months. And then, I think we can almost set June and July aside as, a very different logic. I think that post was somewhat prescient that, we started to see in more numbers that the on-premise really has regained some strength, and that's been good for craft brewers. If you caught, Lester's presentation of fintech data earlier this week, which if he were here, he'd want me to remind everyone that's a sample. So, we saw a 9% depletion rise in that, but not necessarily that's going to translate everywhere, in the beer market. But that showed very strong on-premise and showed growing share for the tail as that on-premise comes back, which is good for craft brewers. And in an early read of our mid-year survey, we're seeing the same thing, that on-premise is coming back, particularly in June, and that has been enough to offset those losses against those big comps that we've seen in off-premise. So I think largely we're seeing what we wanted to see, that really tough year for craft brewers where the on-premise was challenged last year is that tide's coming back, and brewers are starting to return to growth driven by still fairly elevated relative to 2019 off-premise sales and on-premise sales, which maybe aren't fully back but are getting pretty close. So
what's your read on at the brewery sales so far?
Yeah, it's a great question to break that out because, if you looked at the data last year, those never dropped quite as far. We saw brewers able to pivot to do those package sales. And, at least from some indicators, things like, Google search data, as well as our mid-year survey, again, where we're taking a snapshot from June, I think we're seeing that those sales are not only back, but maybe now, higher than they were in 2019. So, brewers have found new strategies, with that to go, that some of which I think is going to be sticky going forward. And so I think those at the brewery sales are now back where they were. Now, whether they're there in dollar sales, with those package sales being a little bit less, I think is harder to know. But in volume terms, I think they're back, if not stronger than they were even in 2019.
Now, is your mid-year survey still open? Do you want to tell people where they can take it?
That is a wonderful plug. Yes, brewers, please fill out our mid-year survey. It's at www.brewersassociation.org/BIPS for Beer Industry Production Survey. And it'll be open for another week or two. So please fill it out.
That's why
Perfect.
Jess is the best in the business. Sam, how is the summer going so far for Dogfish Head? What's working and what could be better? You're still on mute.
No, I think I'm on. Can you guys hear me? Oh, I'm
Now
there.
we
Good.
can, yeah.
Okay, sorry about that. So just first off, just from a Boston beer perspective, we're firing all cylinders, really proud, hitting double-digit growth, led mostly by Truly, which gained 5 points a share with White Claw in the second quarter. Great growth with Twisted Tea. The Cousin campaign's really resonating with Sam Adams. We did a great job launching our fruited cider, and it's awesome to see Crisp really succeeding as on-prem, especially draft comes back. With brand Dogfish, we're really excited for this month because this is our biggest focus month. We have our Mother Nature Let's Do This campaign where we kind of bet heavy that we'd be coming out of COVID cabin fever last fall when we planned for this. And essentially right now we're working hard, Boston Beer, distributors, retailers, and everyone on brand Dogfish to get our displays up all around our core offerings, as Danelle mentioned, with the shift to off-prem last year. One trend that's not going away is the excitement around finding core products in bigger packages, i.e. 12 packs, which Dogfish did kind of lag on compared to other top 25 craft. But I'm proud to say, right now we're looking at about being up 15% on our 12 packs. And this summer, Mother Nature Let's Do This program is all about our core four, especially 12 packs of 60-minute Hazy-O, Sequence, Slightly Mighty, our variety pack that we now have in market, line price with our core beers, year-round, dynamic, changing up a little prize in the Cracker Jack box every time there's a new iteration of the variety pack, and getting displays of our canned cocktails next to them. And I know we'll talk more about the fourth category later, but that's just finally starting to get out there with our three canned cocktails, and we're really, really excited about that opportunity for Dogfish too as we head in the summer. And the weather's hot. We're super proud. We not only have our truly ice pops, but we also have our Hazy-O. We just launched with Tipsy Scoop a Hazy-O alcohol infused version of a vegan ice cream featuring the same oat milk that we put into the first nationally distributed oat milk infused beer, which is Hazy-O. So lots to be excited about right now.
Going to have some of that ice cream, and I might have to hit maybe Kroger to get that if Jason is carrying it. Jason, how is the summer going so far for the beer category within Kroger, and what's hot, and are you guys avoiding out of stock so far?
There's a lot to unpack in that question. So
there is. Yeah, I'll let you take it.
I'll start with the summer and the trends. As Danelle said, we were kind of expecting is on-premise kind of started to come back, a little bit of give back this year, but really we haven't seen as much give back as what we were anticipating, and really the numbers on our beer side have been phenomenal. Not only kind of meeting expectations and exceeding them for versus 20, but then also versus 19. So we're looking at the same 2-year stack for health and really looking at market share. We've been very pleased with what we've seen from a summer selling standpoint to this, so far. Brands that are just killing it. Modelo's been a brand that we've had a lot of growth with, but then, anything seltzer with Truly and White Claw. We've had some successful launches in pockets with Topo Chico and Alani hard seltzers, which are some crossover items. But all in all, just seeing really some strong number performance, even with some core items like Michelob Ultra and Busch. Busch Light Apple, I think, was just released, and there's a lot of buzz in the markets and from customer demand on those items. But really seen a lot of success so far this year. The out of stock one is probably the biggest hindrance to our path forward and what we've seen, and that is in-stock position's been difficult, and really pinning down communication around supply chain has been very spotty across the country, with some markets being in good position on a key item, and then having other of our markets sitting completely empty. And so we've really tried to get weekly reporting from our major CPGs and suppliers on, what does it look like, and it's really ebbs and flows week to week, and we're watching bottles and cans very closely. And that really started early on through the pantry load that we saw last year with COVID. We've been in a little bit of we were in a better inventory position last year during the pandemic than what I've seen us be in this year post-pandemic. So that's the tough part for me.
Yeah. So we just made it through the July 4th holiday, and we don't have a full picture of scans yet, Danelle, as you were saying before we started. But Danelle, what's your feeling coming out of the holiday, and how big of an effect did the nasty weather in the Northeast have on sales?
Yeah. So, when I looked at Memorial Day performance for 2021, we definitely looked at versus last year and then 2 years ago to have a really good sense of how performance was for Memorial Day. So we'd like to do the same for July 4th, which we'll have that complete set of data by next week. Looking at what we have so far, we're declining compared to last year. We expect that. We probably won't be declining as much once again we have that full set of data. But when you look across regions, there were a couple of regions that really stood out, and it was the Mid-Atlantic and the New England regions in particular where we saw some of the deepest declines so far. The regions where we saw some of the bigger declines were also the regions where we didn't see as strong of growth rates in seltzer. So it goes back to that hard seltzer is really it continues to drive and kind of pull the category along in a lot of areas. There are some markets where seltzer is a little bit more developed and might not have had growth rates, or in some cases might have even had declines that were a little deeper in those regions. And that also is where we saw some of the bigger declines so far for 4th of July for the total category.
Bart, I know the BA has declared July 3rd National Independent Beer Run Day, and it's really started to get some traction on social. What's your read on how the beer holiday itself went and how the Independent Beer Day run was received?
Yeah, I think it was received well by members, which, that's always our primary goal. We saw, growing engagement and lots of downloads of the toolkit and social media mentions. I think it's a little too early to really pull apart the data. And obviously we're going to have weird comps this year versus last year in looking at that. But, we're hearing good things from the members who leaned into it and activated it as another way to get, people to look for their brands or, to come by their brewery. And, July 4th is such a huge holiday for the whole beer industry. Trying to tell the independent beer story as a part of it, we'd be missing if we didn't try. So, we're excited about that, and we're glad that brewers have adopted it and engaged with it.
Right. We've gotten a few press releases independent of, from other media sources pitching us on stories for Independent Beer Run Day. So I think it's really catching on.
Yeah, it's great to hear. Yeah, it's a great time to go, visit your local brewery. Not that any other time is, but we're glad to see the excitement build.
Jason, would like to get a read on how the July 4 holiday went in your stores. How'd it go? Because I haven't been at a Kroger, but I have been in some grocery stores, and I'm kind of that weird person who's always taking photos of the stacks to see what's moving and what's not. So what can you tell us about how things went?
Yeah, I think, we're still looking and evaluating with some IRI and market share information as we're waiting for some of that to come out at the end of this week to really measure some of the success for us. But we were really excited to see the numbers. I think the biggest, challenges, as we've mentioned, and it'll be a repetitive theme from me today, is really just supply chain. We were a little bit constrained going into 4th of July on some key items. And so we're really having to make sure that we communicate well with our store teams and the suppliers to just make sure that we're trying to take as much inventory on hand to get through the holiday week and not wait for delivery. And that's been the struggle, is really timing when the inventory hits and making sure that our stores are full for the customer. And I think we still probably left some sales on the table because it's just hard to get through a holiday weekend like that with where a lot of people were off that Thursday, Friday, going into the Monday, and making sure that we have enough product to keep the cold box full. And so very happy with the holiday, but we probably did leave some money on the table and disappointed some customers by just not having the items there, because we just have some in-stock position issues right now.
I'm sure you guys are not alone in that. So shifting gears a little bit, Sam, Dogfish has had a huge year for innovation. The brand's released several new products: Hazy O, Scratch-made canned cocktails, Lemon Quest non-alc beer. How have each of those met your expectations, and what have you learned from playing in those new spaces in a bigger way than in the past?
Yeah, well, I mean, to start with, we're really excited about the opportunity for Hazy O because it kind of very uniquely sits between that number one growth trend in craft beer styles of hazy IPAs, which Bart could give more detail on latest look at that, as could Danelle, but and then the other trend of better for you, with oat milk being such a sort of better for you phenomena that Starbucks had to ration it or shut it off for a little while. So we really love that unique positioning as a brand that's been doing, active lifestyle beer since before active lifestyle was even a term in the beverage world, starting with Namaste, our yoga themed beer from over a decade ago, and Sea Quench and Slightly Mighty. So we're really excited for the trajectory out of the gates with Hazy O. We've had some really fun successes partnering with different retailers to do like cross promotion, like it's Oat O'Clock somewhere, where we're displaying Elmhurst oat milk on a display next to our Hazy O, reminding people they can start their day with oat milk and end their day with oat milk. So that's been a lot of fun. Canned cocktails, as we know, that is a space that's literally on fire. I think 85% up year to date is what I've seen as a number. And while that is, Jess, to your point, a new launch for us, it's actually the longest R&D gestation project in our 26-year history. We are one of the original craft distillers in the country. We started distilling 20 years ago, and we started using our gins, our rums, and vodkas, and brandies, and whiskeys in our cocktails and our own properties for all those 20 years. So literally, the three initial canned cocktails Dogfish brought to market were recipes that have been ideated and improved for all of those 20 years. And the blueberry shrub cocktail Justin's enjoying for Liquid Courage as we do that actually won the Best of Show at the LA Spirits Awards before it even hit the market. So we know the quality of liquid is there, but we also know it's a very crowded space and it's getting more crowded every day. So one of the things we're really leaning into with July as Dogfish Head's focus month across all of BBC is getting our 8-case displays of the canned cocktails out there. And the canned cocktail category is just so unique in that it's all over the map in so many ways, not just the spirits base, but the ABVs as well, from a high noon proposition, which is definitely playing more in the seltzer space at 4.5 ABV, to something like Cutwater that's got tons of different ABVs. With Dogfish, we made the intentional choice to line ABV our canned cocktails. They're all 7% alcohol. They're all 2 full-proof shots in every 12-ounce cans, and they all are as dynamic in aroma, flavor, but also color. If you actually decant them, you see a great diversity of color because we're really leaning into the all-natural culinary ingredients that Dogfish Head's always leaned into from a beer side. And the last of your 3 categories you talked about, we're super proud of our activities in the non-alc space that we know is also a huge growth potential space in the 4th category. We have our Just the Haze non-alc from our Sam Adams brand, and our Lemon Quest from Dogfish, which is a fruited wheat beer. That one we're really proud. We're referencing our partnership with the Nature Conservancy on pack, and it's sort of the non-alc analog for Sequench Ale in that it's designed on a molecular level, to be the most refreshing non-alc that's out there, with acai berries, blueberry, and sea salt. So too early to tell where it's going data-wise, but we couldn't be more excited for the innovations that we released this year in terms of being on trend with where the drinker's going.
Danelle, we got to talk about hard seltzer because that's what everybody talks about. You talked about it driving growth. We've noticed it's decelerated some in the off-premise this year. Has the summer of hard seltzer peaked quite yet, or is it just peaking for some?
I would say, well, first we could talk about hard seltzer for like 4 of these sessions, I think, and 4 more hours. But I would say that, seltzers potentially has peaked for some. When we look at year-over-year sales, seltzers for summer 2021 are still surpassing sales from 2020, which is incredible given the skyrocketing sales that I keep talking about in off-premise from 2020. We're still surpassing those sales. So as a whole, the seltzer pie continues to grow at a much slower pace, we are starting to see some differences in some of the brands and how they're advancing and moving forward. So, 2 and 3 years ago, we were always talking about White Claw and Truly, and they accounted for somewhere between 80-85% of the segment. Now that's dropped down to about 70%, but I would say that Truly's been holding share for the past couple of years, and Truly's had a lot of innovation, and it's that innovation that's driving a lot of that growth too, especially in 2021. And then when you look at the top 10, the way the seltzer segment looks today and year to date for 2021 versus 2 years ago is so drastically different, especially when we think about the top 10 brands and the largest brands ranked by dollars. So 7 of those top 10 brands didn't exist 2 years ago. So it's a very different picture than where we were 2 years ago in seltzer. There have been a number of really successful launches this year of new brands. And I think seltzer is one of those things where it's kind of like this blank canvas where there's so many directions that you can go in terms of flavors. So right now there are a lot of kind of softer, more palatable flavors, but you can go in a really bold direction. You can go higher ABV, you can go lower ABV. You can, I mean, Sam talked about the health and wellness trend that hasn't, I mean, we saw it before the pandemic and it hasn't slowed down. I think it's just going to continue and increase even more. So you can, you know, there's a lot that you can play on there. Consumers are still really looking for low carb, low sugar. Low calorie is a smaller piece of that, but it's really the low carb and the low sugar that's a big part of that. And then on top of that, like, you know, we haven't even talked about yet of what on-premise can mean for seltzers. This is where it's a segment that is so unique, where we saw it grow and develop in the off-premise, and we never see that in alcohol. And so now that on-premise is starting to open up so much more, what are the possibilities at stadiums, at music festivals, traditional on-premise? And then even when we're talking about off-premise, there's still a lot of room for growth within C-store. So I would say seltzer hasn't peaked. I would say that we're going on year 4 of talking about how big seltzer is. So I think it still goes back to, it's something that's a longer term trend, but growth is slowing, and that's expected.
Well, one brand that we won't be talking about for very much longer is Coors Seltzer, which was discontinued recently. Jason, is the death of Coors Seltzer the hard seltzer segment's canary in the coal mine moment for some? Do you see a shakeout coming this fall, even on your shelves?
No, I think, you know, from a standpoint of the Coors Seltzer, you know, it's a brand that did okay in small pockets around the country, but just didn't gain traction for us or them nationally. And so we were looking at, you know, the biggest thing I would say for us is we definitely have a pressure for items to, you know, fail fast. We are pushing a lot of innovation. We've seen a lot of innovation on the seltzer, not only with core brands, but new and emerging brands in the space. And we're really trying to capitalize on making sure that we get those offerings out in front of customers. But the cold box is getting less time for items to earn. Once they're there, they have to be ready to go as soon as they hit. And I think that's the challenge with Coors is, it's a competitive landscape right now, especially when you're taking on Truly and White Claw, and they've had some major innovation launches this year as well, and they haven't given up an inch. And so I don't think it's a canary in the coal mine moment. And I agree with Danelle. I think there's still some upside and plenty of branches to go, whether it's in the higher alc or there's still a lot of flavors to play with in the space. So.
Bart, do you see an opportunity for craft seltzers to make meaningful headway into the segment at this point, or do you think the die is kind of cast?
Yeah, I think there are opportunities, though we should be realistic about how large they are. You know, are they as big as they are in beer? You know, probably not. You know, we've seen how brand driven the category has been. But, you know, there are signs that, you know, the overlap between craft drinkers and seltzer drinkers in our consumer survey work has continued to grow. So, you know, you're talking about one and the same. And so, you know, you can unlock some of the things that, you know, drives them to the seltzer occasion, but with craft branding, I think there are opportunities there. You know, a second thing to say is as the category grows, you know, even if that long tail holds share, that's going to be a bigger number over time. And that's kind of what we've seen is that, you know, the smallest players haven't really made a meaningful dent in the overall share numbers. There are some exceptions, but that they've risen with the category. And I think we can see that. And, you know, the final opportunity I see is in, well, flavor, you know, Danelle talked about as we get to more interesting, unique flavors, you know, as seltzer diversifies, if that's going to happen, that's something that craft brewers know well and can play there, as well as, you know, craft distillers or small winemakers. And then finally, you know, as the category grows, you're going to see diversity in retail outlets. And, you know, seltzer has been a, you know, more chain driven, you know, product so far. But if we see, you know, on-premise pick up more seltzer or, you know, smaller retail establishments, you know, go bigger into seltzer, that's a place where smaller, nimble players can play. They can have more local offerings. So, you know, I don't want to overstate. I don't think seltzer is going to be a huge part for most small brewers, but as the category grows, there's going to be more opportunity. And I think you'll see more small brewers look to play in the space just because it's different and they know their consumers are drinking there.
So, Jason, as we've seen the growth of hard seltzer and RTDs, how are you divvying up the cold space? How much more of that is going to seltzer and RTDs than in the past? And where is that space coming from?
Yeah, it is $1 million question, because our cold boxes are at a premium from a space perspective. When you look at the innovation just in the seltzer space alone, we've had to really grow that size. We've done, Matt Pennington, that is my beer category manager, really works hard to try and orient packages to where it is. We are trying to get more out of that cold box space, making sure that we're protecting days supply, but then really, it takes, when we were talking about items that we have to fail fast on, if something's not working, we have to free up that room quickly. We are, trying to free up cold box for both some additional hard seltzer SKUs, and then the bigger challenge for us right now is ready to drink, because ready to drink has been in our stores really placed more warm in the spirit side than it has been in cold, but there's a customer demand for this to be in refrigeration. And if we're going to add it into and merge it with beer cold box, then those items have to be able to turn at the same velocity rate as beer. And right now that, not many of those items do. And so when you're looking at a ready to drink canned cocktail, comparatively against spirits turns versus beer turns, there's a drastic difference there. So we have to make sure that we're, maximizing the real estate of those cold boxes. And so we are constantly evaluating it, but we are for sure adding and looking to add additional refrigeration in our stores for ready to drink, and maybe not, come at the expense of beer cold box, but we're trying to get creative with ways to approach.
Well, speaking of RTDs, Sam, the big news of the day was the strategic partnership formed between Boston Beer and Beam Suntory, which is just another example of how the lines are blurring within the beer category. How do you see Dogfish Head possibly playing a role in that in the future and benefiting?
Well, I'll just start by saying, we really do believe that, Boston Beer is the most consumer-focused beverage innovation company in America, and that means we intend to always be looking to go where the consumer wants us to go. So with this new partnership, as Jason was just talking about, the growth of the RTD space and sort of also the sort of expansion of what RTD means, all the different categories within the fourth category. It really reminds me of where IPA has gone, right? Where IPA was a category, and then it got to a scale where it splintered into numerous subcategories, from session to imperial to hazy. We all see that happening, albeit I think at even an accelerated rate and with more volume in the RTD space. So I think it's super complementary to our space. And myself, Jim Cook, Dave Broek, what we always try to talk about with our fellow leaders at BBC is being thoughtful when we look at our portfolio as sort of a chessboard, and saying, here's the pieces that we want to play in the spaces that we want to play in, and being really thoughtful to break down this fourth category into all these complementary spaces, right? Like, for example, we intentionally are keeping Dogfish on the high end, both in ABV and in price point of our canned cocktail space. We're not going towards that high noon proposition at 4.5 and sort of that seltzer space. That doesn't mean there won't be a BBC play in that space, but we really are trying to be really thoughtful and methodical about where we're placing our bets in a way that's going to be the most exciting for the consumer, but also that's going to be the most incremental for our distributors and our retailers. So I think with the announcement you mentioned today, it's going to be super incremental with some other very trusted and renowned brands to complement those brands that are always already in the BBC portfolio. But to specific to your question on Dogfish RTDs, we believe in that canned cocktail space. For us, it's leaning into our 20-year heritage of being one of the original craft distilleries, i.e. spirits based. canned cocktails. But Dogfish has always been having fun with playing outside the box. One of our best-selling items at our Dogfish Miami that we just opened is Dogfish Head Mojito, which is basically a mojito that's ale-based. So we're taking some of our undiluted, truly soup-based DNA, blending it with our Sequench wheat beer DNA, and then we're muddling, fresh Florida cane syrup and lime juice and mints, and serving that by the pint over ice as a beer cocktail. So we'll keep putting the mental and experimental and the where in Delaware, but we'll also, within the BBC portfolio, be really methodical about the lanes that we're choosing. The ones that we chose today, we're really, really excited about for how complementary they are to the BBC portfolio.
That mojito sounds delicious. So
Road trip.
we can make that happen. So Danelle, in recent years, we've seen seltzer sales start to dip to varying degrees as soon as colder weather starts to set in. So Danelle, do you expect seasonality to play out again this year? And with the growth of RTD spirits-based cocktails, which do tend to heat up a little bit in Q4, do you anticipate a similar story?
Yeah, I definitely think we'll continue to see seasonality. So over the past 3-4 years, we've seen, the spike in sales in the summer for hard seltzer. Last summer, we saw the peak of seltzer share for the total category at around 4th of July. Last week, seltzer share was almost at 12%. It was like, for the latest 4 weeks, it's like 11.8%. So I think when we look at 4th of July numbers, that's where we're going to see seltzer peak in terms of share. And then we'll see that slowly decline into the fall. And again, that's what we've seen every year. And so that's what we should anticipate. Ready to drink spirit cocktails, there's some seasonality to them too. And then also, I mean, the industry, when we talk about ready to drink cocktails, in a lot of cases, we're also including seltzers for spirit. So High Noon, for example, is included in most everybody's numbers when they're talking about ready to drink spirit cocktails. So there's some seasonality, especially when we're talking about summer. There's still some seasonality to ready to drink spirit cocktails too.
Mm-hmm. So Bart, the BA recently shared results of its annual consumer survey, which we always tune into and cover every year. And one takeaway for us was that while craft has slowed a little, it's still growing, and the number of craft drinkers is at an all-time high. You also coined my new favorite beer industry term, maybe my new favorite word in general, omnibivorous, to describe the growth of cross-category consumption. So how do you see these omnibivorous ways that we've all developed continuing into the future?
Well, first we're on a beer podcast where we've talked about seltzer, spirits, RTDs. So clearly, I mean, this world is here, and I think once that genie is out, especially when it's driven by the consumer, it's hard to put back in. Craft consumers are at the forefront of being omnivorous, of drinking wine, drinking spirits, drinking everything with beverage alcohol, and I don't think we see them going back. And for producers, for brewers, this is a challenge and an opportunity. The challenge is that there are now more options for almost every occasion. To the question Danelle just answered, will RTDs, be seasonal? Probably, because everything's seasonal, but I think they're going to be less seasonal than, say, seltzer, because they have a broader range of occasions they can play in with different flavors and ABVs, and Sam talked about the fracturing. So that's a challenge, but at the same time, this world where people are drinking lots of different things, I think, is an opportunity for small producers, because there's just so many more niches and there's so many more places to play between categories. We're seeing, all these weird little fun things, beers and, kombucha beer hybrids and, braggots coming back, and just, all sorts of stuff that small producers who have always been focused on innovation, on doing crazy things, I think just have some advantages. And it's going to take a shift in mindset for some companies to break out of kind of traditional beer categories. But I think in the long run, it's good. It's going to push innovation, and it's a place where small producers just have inherent advantages, because they can move very, very quickly to chase some of these really fun, unique consumer trends as we see drinkers, bounce around different places.
Jason, with all these omnibivorous ways, how has your approach to the fall resets this year changed maybe than previous years?
The big thing is for us is, innovation is kind of a pillar within our organization, and trying to make sure that we are getting these really innovative items out in front of our customers and doing that much quicker than we've been able to historically do. I would say that would be our largest, single change when we look at fall resets and really across beer, wine, and spirits, is that we're really trying to push the envelope and ramp up the innovation story. And we're probably adding more items in a fall set cycle than we've ever added before, because usually we always considered, fall as a kind of a pull and plug, very minor adjustments to sets. And that, that's evolved. We get really a lot of innovation launched, not just in spring windows now, but really year round. And if we only approach major innovation cycles with spring in mind, then we're leaving a lot on the table. So we're just adding a lot more SKUs and really trying to make sure that we're being more granular in our approach than we ever have, down to not only store level, but individual segments and how our customers are interacting with our stores, and so there's just been a lot more. It's made it a lot larger set cycle than what it has historically been from a fall timing perspective.
So, Bart, what is your expectations for seasonal performance this year for craft brewers? What's going to be hot?
I think we've seen in recent years that seasonals have come back a little bit. That expectations got reset. We had a couple of years back where everybody bet big on pumpkin, and it fell a little flat. But I think since then we've seen everyone reset expectations at kind of more of a right level. And so those have come back. I think here, this is where the data gets a little bit tricky. Seasonal packs just in general haven't done quite as well in recent years. I think, there's been a lot written and talked about here that there's just so much innovation, as Jason talked about, that, seasonal used to be the what's new. I'm going to pick up the seasonal pack to, try the new beer. And now there's, 20 of those options in, a beer portfolio and way more across beverage alcohol. So you need that a little bit less. To contradict myself again, which economists are good at, I do think that, we've seen people want seasonal over the past year, and, that giving some sense of normalcy and touchstone to life in a world that's been turned up. So I think there's some mixed signals, but I think we're seasonal on the weird comps that we're on, versus 2019 is what I really mean. It is poised to grow a little bit this year. And while that's not the only place for innovation now, we're seeing more brewers understand how having that regular seasonal calendar can help them. And so we're going to see a good fall, and we're going to see fall seasonals do pretty well.
So Danelle, we always want to know what's next. And when we look at the beer category, what do you see as the most disruptive products right now? Or what's a small but fast growing segment that should be on everybody's radar?
I think looking at consumers first, then that helps us to understand what's gonna be coming. What we continue to hear across total consumer goods of consumer trends is around health and wellness and mindful drinking, the kind of need and idea for experience and convenience. And so I think any products that offer those are gonna help to that's where we're going to see some of the biggest growth rates. Sam talked about active lifestyle brands. And so I don't know when we all started calling them active lifestyle brands, and maybe that came from Sam a long time ago, but that's where we continue to see a lot of growth rates from active lifestyle brands. They're up about somewhere between 20-25%. So up, much higher than what we're seeing the current category, the total category right now. Outside of that, I think still opportunities for growth in seltzer that I talked about before, but even not only exploration within flavors, but additional subsegments. So the lemonade, hard seltzers, hard tea seltzers, and any type of tequila inspired seltzer or product, agave inspired or agave based product. And then a lot of products that I would call maybe Hispanic inspired or Latinx inspired in some way. So if you look at the Modelo Chelada Mango in Chile is doing really well. Topo Chico as a brand is doing well. We're seeing more lime and salt seltzers. if you think about like 805 Cerveza. So all of those, I think we're going to continue to see growth within those segments too. And then finally, in some of kind of those smaller segments, not necessarily just in beer, but across total alcohol, frozen, I mean, Sam's got ice cream, and so I want that. But when we talk about the alcohol base itself, frozen pops, and we're seeing that a lot in spirits. So it's a really, really small base right now, but a lot of growth happening there. And, we're seeing more and more frozen seltzer type products too. So one other thing that I would add to that, and it goes back to the health and wellness piece and where we're seeing consumers, I always like to look outside of alcohol to understand what potentially we're going to see next in alcohol. So when you look at the non-alcoholic segments for beverages, that's where, last year energy drinks and sports drinks weren't doing as well for a lot of reasons related to the pandemic. There just weren't the drinking occasions relevant to them, but we're seeing a lot of pickup in that space. And then any fruit and vegetable type drink where there are a lot of health claims that go along with it, which of course is very specific to a non-alcoholic space. It's very different idea and ways that suppliers can play within alcohol. That said, I still think it's always important for us to understand kind of where consumers and how consumers are purchasing across total food and beverage. So when you look at what Nielsen IQ is tracking in terms of health and wellness claims across total food and beverage, the claims that we're seeing as the strongest growth rates are still coming from keto, low sugar, low carb, paleo, anything related to low sugar, no sugar, and then also anything related to plant-based. So those are kind of all things that consumers are really thinking about when they're thinking about health and wellness. And one more piece of that, I think, is related to the no-alc space. Not non-alcoholic segments like carbonated beverage, but non-alcoholic beer, wine, and spirits. We continue to see really strong growth rates. Even right now, we're seeing growth rates of 40% versus a year ago across beer, wine, and spirits. We're seeing vegan wines pop up. We see low alc, no alc, ready to drink cocktails that are coming. So I think we're going to continue to see a lot in that space too. That was a very long answer to your question of just a couple of segments. It was dangerous to ask me that.
Well, that's all right, because we're right at the end here, and we're going to do one last question and final rapid fire. Give us one bold prediction for the beer category for the rest of 2021. So we'll start with you, Jason.
Oh, one bold prediction.
Yep, rapid fire.
Yeah,
that's bold as you can get.
I don't have a bold prediction for the category. I think we're just going to continue to thrive in the market. We've had tremendous success, and I'm looking forward to driving it home in the back half. I just want to get some more inventory in house, and we'll be good. But I don't have a Super Bowl prediction, but we're going to finish the back half strong. So,
Bart, what's your bold prediction?
I'll put a bold prediction that by late summer, draft will be back to where it was. I think we're getting close, and late summer is kind of where it peaked last year. So I think late summer will, whether we keep there, I don't know. That's too bold for me, but I think we'll get back there by late summer.
Danelle, what's your fast, bold prediction?
Not necessarily bold, but I would just say that innovation is going to continue to play a really, really important role, both in the craft beer space and the beyond beer space for the rest of the year.
Sam, take us home.
Yeah, echoing tons of talk today about innovation. I do want to circle back that, the fact that a great innovation that we heard from Jason, the fact that, a lot of retailers just consider that fall moment as like a cleanup moment, and to see, Kroger saying, no, we need to think about this the same way we think of the big moment of the spirit, because so much innovation is coming, is really encouraged for those of us that love innovation. And so my prediction as someone who also loves beer, and a company that beer's the middle name, is that this year and next year will be the year of the Pilsner. Winemakers say it takes a lot of good beer to make good wine. If you go into any of these breweries of all scales across America, as they're making their hazy IPAs, in the warmer months, they're drinking their Pilsners while they make those IPAs. And it probably goes back to the trends Danelle's talking about. Super flavorful. It's like the seltzer of hundreds of year-old beer styles. Super flavorful, low calorie, beautiful to drink year-round. So the return of the Pilsner is my prediction.
Good enough. Bart, Danelle, Jason, Sam, this has been great. Thanks for doing this. Everyone out there, stick around. We will be back with a conversation on the future of craft beer bars. Thanks for sticking around. Our second conversation is about the future of the American craft beer bar and how its role has evolved in the wake of the closing of iconic craft beer bar, the Falling Rock Tap House in Denver. We'll also dive into the consumer behaviors our guests have seen since the reopening of the on-premise channel. Sticking around for the conversation is my co-host, Jess Infante. Thanks for sticking there, Jess.
Of course, no problem. Did I have a choice?
No, you did not. And neither did Sam Calagione, who is also here. Thanks for sticking around, Sam.
Justin and Jess, we love doing this. Dogfish is super proud to be the longtime sponsor of these shindigs, and couldn't be more excited for the panel we're about to have with a bunch of industry leaders.
That's right. Dogfish is our presenting sponsor. Our other sponsors are the Reyes Beer Division, as well as John I. Haas. That's Brew One by John I. Haas. And joining us on this panel, this second all-star panel, is Michael Roper, owner of the Hop Leaf Bar in Chicago. He's coming to us live from Italy. Thanks for being here, Michael.
You're welcome. I wouldn't miss it for the world.
We are so appreciative for your time today. We're also appreciative that Melissa Myers, the owner of the Good Hop in Oakland, is here. Thanks for being here, Melissa.
Of course, thanks for inviting me. I'm super stoked to have this chat.
Last but not least, we have Selena Teo, the owner of the Belfry Lounge in Kansas City, Missouri, a place that I am very, very familiar with. Thank you for being here, Selena. I think maybe she's got some technical issues still, but we're going to get rolling here. We're 7 months into 2021 and past two big summer beer drinking occasions. Michael, how has the year gone so far for the Hop Leaf?
Well, we were closed for 7 of the previous, 12 months until April 1st. And we reopened April 1st with 50% capacity allowed and other, social distancing. And it just exploded. It did so. Even with those kind of restrictions, we were doing the same numbers we were doing in 2019 with 43 less employees and, 23 less employees. And, it's been very gratifying. And then on June 11th, all of the restrictions expired and we brought the bar stools back in, brought the extra tables back in and opened just like we'd been open for the last 30 years. And we've been packed ever since. I mean, it's been, it's like a grand opening. Everybody's got this pent up demand to go out to their local pub. And we're definitely, we're very, very busy.
Selena, how has the return of the on-premise gone so far at the Belfry?
You got your mute button, Selena. There's a mute button, but we can see you moving.
Sorry. Actually, business has been going well. We never closed except for that 2.5 months that we were forced to for only to go. And slowly but surely, everything has been coming back. And we've been actually seeing great numbers, a lot of people eating, a lot of people drinking, everybody's happy.
I think we're still having
over this time.
I think we're still having some connection issues. Melissa, how has it gone so far in Oakland at the Good Hop?
It's pretty much as Michael talked about. We kind of fought tooth and nail for 17 months to stay alive in any way we possibly could, which meant we became an online beer store and handed beer out our side door like a speakeasy. But now, same thing. So on June 15th, they let all the restrictions go. And we put all our bar stools back and put all our tables back. And it was literally like nothing's ever happened. except that we're seeing the same kind of things that Michael's seen in Chicago, is that, you know, people are really excited to go sit at a bar, and we've had people come walk through our door and start dancing. We had a woman walk through our door and just start sobbing. We're like, okay, come on, sit at the bar. Let's get a beer in you. So it's been great. I mean, it's been like a grand opening, you know, it's a homecoming, and all the community that we managed to keep a hold of during not being able to see their faces. They're all starting to come back and see each other. We've got people who actually have been gone for years and years come back, and they're like, we heard you made it through, so we came back, you know, so it's been awesome.
Anybody who happy cries at walking into their favorite bar would definitely sounds like somebody I should be friends with.
Right.
So, Melissa, how much of your in-bar business has returned, and how does that break down compared to any kind of takeout business you guys were doing? I know you don't really do much food, but were you doing any beer and other drinks to go?
I mean, we have we're kind of a mixed bar. So we have 16 draft taps, but we have 450 cans and bottles, and those have always been to go or to consume on site. So it made it easy for us to slide into the to-go side pretty hardcore. And then when we reopened, we kind of pushed everyone back to draft to kind of be like, yo, it's draft. Draft is back. Like, have a pint, don't open a can, take that home with you. And so that's been huge, but people are definitely ready to go back to normal. They want to be able to grab the cans and drink them at the bar. You know, and like you said, we don't have food. So we're actually starting to work on that program, because why just slide back into normal, but let's change it all over again and try something different. So yeah, I mean, we're just seeing people are just, and the to-go section's still happening. We still have people ordering online. You know, not everybody wants to be in a bar yet. They're not totally sure. So we're trying to kind of maintain that balance of keeping the convenience for people who still would like to take it home and not be in a bar, and then also welcome everyone who wants to come and sit.
Great. Selena, how would you say the in-bar business compares to whatever takeout you still have going on at the Belfry?
The in-bar business has actually been doing great. The to-go part has fizzled. There's still quite a few people and neighbors that still just get their food to go and have the entire year and a half. But the in-bar business has really picked up. I'm really optimistic and positive about the direction it's going, and certainly happy.
That's great to hear. Michael, given your location and all the Italian I took in high school, I really want to call you Michele right now, but I know the Hop Leaf shut down for quite a while, so you weren't really open when takeout was the only option. What are you noticing with your customers right now? Do most people want to come in and stick around? Or are you doing some to-go sales?
We never really bought into the to-go at all. We didn't do it before the pandemic. We always felt that Hop Leaf is kind of an experiential place that you can't put in a box. We do sell a lot of food, but our food is very, you know, it's kind of chef driven. It involves a lot of prep and a really big staff. And we just decided that, you know, like it was actually in our economic favor to just completely shut down. So we didn't do, the only to-go that we did is right after the March closing. You know, I found myself having a lot of bottled beer on hand and a lot of kegs. I had 88 full kegs of beer and 66 tapped kegs. So I did a big growler sale, which we never did growlers before. We weren't even allowed to do it before. We sold all that beer. We sold all of our bottled beer. We sold about 6,000 bottles of beer. But when it was gone, that was it. You know, we just shut down and stayed shut down until we were allowed to reopen partially last summer a little bit. And then we shut down November 1st until April 1st.
So Sam, when you hear the way that everybody's describing how their businesses have grown and survived and changed, what goes through your head at hearing all of these stories?
Elation, you know, and it's like, as we know, they'll not everything will return to normal, and not everything should. The new normal will create some new exciting opportunities. I was on a hybrid teams last night while Todd Bolig, who runs Boston Beer's category management, had his whole team at City Tavern, literally the tavern in Philadelphia where our forefathers wrote the Declaration of Independence. And so it was a new world where the people were live in this third space, which is what beer bars are. But there was a hybrid sort of techie component to it, much like as we will probably talk about QR codes later and handheld POS later. There'll be a new world order. But what will go back to normal, thankfully, is this beloved idea of the third space. And I think the third space, i.e. the true tavern experience, it has been such a boon for the craft beer renaissance since it started, because it's the place where you can go and take a risk on a beverage you've never tried before, and it's not as big of a financial risk as walking into a store and buying a 12-pack or buying a case. And moreover, unlike walking into a store and buying a case or going to some e-commerce site, you get the passion and you get the education and you get the knowledge of people like Melissa and Michael and Selena to say, hey, we intentionally curated these things to be in our space. You chose to come here because of our reputation. Let us tell you about what's new and exciting and take a small risk on it by 12 ounces or 16 ounces at a time. So I couldn't be more excited for the moment we're talking about right now.
Michael, from what you've seen so far, how different is the consumer that is coming back into your bar?
We are definitely seeing all of our longtime regulars are coming in. We don't have during the summer, we usually see a lot of tourists and travelers and people coming to Chicago for trade shows and conventions. That's still not happening. So our customer base now has become much more local. And our customers tend to be a little more mature, a little older than a lot of the other craft beer bars. The big change is when they're coming. We tried for almost 30 years to figure out some way to get people to come in during the day. And we're in a neighborhood, we're not downtown. And it just was a complete failure. Since we reopened April 1st, almost 40% of our business is before 6 o'clock. We're really busy during the day, and that is fantastic. On the other end, the late night drinkers are kind of vanishing. But for quality of life for my staff, that is fantastic. Like now, we could close at midnight and the employees can go home and have some kind of sleep instead of getting home at 2:30 or 3 o'clock in the morning. And if we can do that business during the day, everything's good about it. But I'm really seeing, I've never seen a time when our customer base was so locavore. It's really, we live in a very dense neighborhood. We're seeing a lot of regulars 2 or 3 times a week again. We are seeing new customers who live in our neighborhood and somehow never came in before. People are bringing their families and their friends. It's like everybody's bringing their parents in to their favorite bar. And I think that's like, I love that. I love when somebody says, comes up at the bar and says, I want you to meet my dad. That's fantastic.
That is awesome. Melissa, how have the consumers sort of changed that are coming back to the Good Hop? And are you also seeing that change in the hours that they're coming in?
Yeah, for sure. Basically everything Michael said is the same out in Oakland. We're now open an hour earlier than we ever were before COVID. We close an hour earlier now. We would like to get up to being open later, but to be honest, part of it is finding employees. We're still not open 7 days a week yet because I don't have enough staff. But yeah, we're seeing people come during the day. A lot of people during COVID all got to work from home, and we would see people all the time, 2, 3 o'clock in the afternoon being like, yeah, I just need to go for a walk. I thought I'd come get a beer. And so same thing, we're seeing our business is, ramped up and heavy, but it's slowing down, into the night. So when we would normally be open till 11, 9 o'clock is where we're starting to see it teeter off. And it's great for the employees. They get to go out and have a drink on their own or go home and get some sleep. And I don't know if the late night, deep drinking sessions are going to come back or not. That maybe that's something we're going to lose in the new normal. But I mean, I'd bring it on if it came. So
Sam, what is Dogfish Head doing to reach some of those consumers as they come back into the bars and restaurants?
Well, echoing Melissa's comments, our biggest struggle is to be there for all the times that customers want to be there. So this week, we're literally for the first time post COVID opening for lunch, which is we're in the absolute heart in coastal Delaware of our busy season, and essentially lost half the summer because of our inability to staff, even though customers are there at the door and want us to be open. So a godsend for us is that to-go business. Like, we were pretty lucky that pre-COVID, we decided to put a small scale canning line inside our brewery that just has a little 5-barrel system in downtown Rehoboth, about 15 miles from our production brewery, so that we could do small scale canning so that people could take beer to go. So even though we don't have enough staff to be open for service on the food side, our what we call our Emporium, P-O-U-R, our Emporium has been able to keep all its hours, and we're just canning off a lot more of our beer so that we can have full hours to get that beer to people. Similarly, another big learning is, and Jim DiTullio, our company's on-prem leader, echoed this, coast to coast, is, the QR code was like, it's kind of like Crocs. It was fucking cool 10 years ago, and then Crocs went out of fashion and suddenly people are wearing Crocs again. QR codes are kind of following the trend curve of Crocs, and I don't think they're going away because it's so convenient. You're hanging with your buddies. You don't necessarily want to have that big conversation. Sometimes, if you want to, you belly up to the bar. That bartender at the establishments of the folks on this Zoom, they'll talk passion beer all day to you, but a lot of people just want to go out, have the experience. They know what they want. That QR code gives them that opportunity. Similarly, I'm here in Dogfish Head, Maine, rural Maine, and even when you take a little boat to a lobster shack, they're bringing up a little handheld device to do the payment as if you're in Tuscany with Michael, the way they've been doing Europe for 30 years. That's suddenly here in America. I don't think that's going to go away because customers love that convenience. And it really does probably help on the service side to save coworkers from running back and forth to a POS station. So those are some of the trends we're seeing and actually investing in our retail locations.
So in early CGA reports, almost nobody was coming back to the on-premise just to drink. And that's starting to change. So Selena, are your customers coming back more for food, or are they seeking bar occasions? What do you really get a sense is happening? You are muted.
Of course, I'm still muted. I am so sorry.
Oh, don't be.
In my place, I have a full service restaurant. So I think part of it is a lot of people are coming in for food. Our average check is a lot higher than it was prior to pandemic. I think that's a food and wants to do full 3 courses, as opposed to, it's just changing everybody's way of thinking to make sure that we're trying to get every dollar we can out of somebody that's walking through the door, because the numbers are lower. But again, the average check is so much higher than it was before because of those reasons. People will have 3-course dinner with me, as opposed to before, maybe they would have 2 cocktails and roll, or 2 beers and just roll.
Fascinating. Michael, is the Hop Leaf seeing something similar?
We're selling more food than we did before. I mean, we've always sold a lot of food, but I think a lot of it is that, for a year, people were cooking all their meals at home and they got really sick of it. And if they weren't eating at home cooked meals, they were eating out of a box. And I think people are thrilled to be in a place and have a plate put in front of them and a fork that isn't plastic and a real napkin and, and a really great choice of beers to match with that, or wine or cocktails. So I think that there was an extreme pent-up demand for eating out. So right now, almost every single person that's coming in the door is eating. And because we're short-staffed, we've actually trimmed our food menu down a little bit to sort of the greatest hits of hop leaf food. And customers are not, they're not upset about it. They'd like to see some of those other things back, but they kind of understand we're a little short-staffed, but they are eating a lot. So right now we're 50-50 food and beverage, which we were not before.
Wow, I totally hear you on people being sick of cooking. Cooking's probably my favorite thing to do. And this time last year, I never wanted to touch a pan again. So definitely relatable. Bit of a bummer question for you guys, but it's definitely something that we've been talking about nationwide is how many restaurants and bars have closed permanently. So Selena, how many businesses around your spot have closed shop, do you think, forever? And how many have reopened? What do you think that ratio is? Actually, Melissa, welcome back, Selena.
Actually, Melissa, let's hit you.
Sure. We definitely saw Oakland's pretty heavy and rich in the beer scene, and we definitely lost a few pretty heavy hitter beer bars, surprisingly. And I think that it's two different things. It's super sad, and you're sad to see them go, and you feel like, oh my God, I made it. Okay, we're still here though. I would say that we probably lost about 20% of the heavy hitter beer bars in Oakland, and we haven't seen any new ones open, which I'm kind of surprised. We used to talk about during this COVID time, when some of us are out there fighting to stay alive, but there's a bunch of people going, man, I'm going to open a new business. Here's my time to plan it out, and we haven't seen them come out yet, but there's always rumors about new places opening up and coming soon. So we'll see if they fill out the market and fill in those spaces.
So is that just you're not seeing new beer bars, or are you seeing new restaurants in general?
In Oakland, not a ton, not as much as I think we all kind of collectively thought we would see. It seems to be that what's opening is at the same rate as it was before COVID.
That's, better than less though. Michael, what are you seeing in Chicago?
I think that fine dining was hurt a lot more than places like us. A lot of fine dining places are gone forever. Not a few beer bars went away. 2 or 3, brewery tap rooms closed. But I was actually impressed at how many survived. But on the restaurant front, it's a lot different and a lot worse. We did one thing that's it's an opportunity is that the places that did close, they were fully built out spaces, and most of the owners didn't own their buildings. So the landlords are saying, here, to a new operator, here's a place. It's built out. The kitchen is completely equipped. We've got bar stools, we've got chairs, we've got tables, we've got silverware. Everything is here. So it is an incredible opportunity for new entrepreneurs to jump in to a space that is fully built out, and that is definitely happening. And so there's actually a lot of new places opening, but I will say the craft beer bar like us is not seeing that kind of interest. There's a lot more interest in opening restaurants. There's a lot more interest in cocktail bars, wine bars. But I think that the concept of the craft beer bar is not as attractive to new investors as it used to be, which is okay with me because I'm still here, and I'll take all that business.
Definitely always great to have fewer competition. Melissa, you mentioned earlier that you guys were thinking about you are working on adding a kitchen, which is a pretty fundamental shift for you. So how else, in what other ways has the pandemic affected the way that you view your business, and how has it changed in the past year?
I think, during COVID, when we were all just trying to survive, friends of mine who owned restaurants were now selling heads of lettuce and tomatoes, and here's, a loaf of bread and a pound of flour. It was like it became a grocery store all of a sudden. And we did a couple of those things. We actually we're now a fish CSA pickup, a seafood pickup spot, which seems super weird, but it's gotten a lot of people introduced to us who come to literally pick up their seafood each week, and then they're like, wait, I can get beer here, you know? And so things like that, I honestly don't think they're going to go away. Like it's not hard for us to keep that going. And yeah, you know, it's made us look at food, right? Because people do want to go out and eat and not eat in a box and not eat with a plastic fork. And so for us, because we're actually a pretty small location and the kitchen it's not an option to put a kitchen in, but it is an option now that all these restaurants and food purveyors have figured out how to make food to go, you know? So they're making stuff where we can pop it into a toaster oven and that we can put into our space and actually get some quality food that, you know, translates well to a place that doesn't have a kitchen like me. So we're looking forward to getting to highlight and, you know, take advantage of that part that grew out of COVID is the kind of mobile food option.
That's exciting. Selena, how are you viewing your business now versus how you viewed it before the pandemic? And what other fundamental changes do you see happening in the way that you're operating?
The business has just changed so much, and I kind of embrace change. It's kind of the thing about entrepreneurship that I love so much is the learning curve is so big and so great. And we're going to continue to change, and I'm going to continue to adapt to it. The biggest thing I think is just like I was talking about earlier is training and really just trying to, you know, connect with everybody, engage and really kind of build relationships. You know, I think that's the biggest thing that people are craving right now, since being cooped up or by themselves or with minimal access to people and restaurants and food and, you know, events in their life. I think they're really kind of craving that engagement with people. And so all these small businesses and taprooms and breweries and being able to chat beer and still help educate about craft beer and anything really is really what I think is going to make people's experiences and make them come back more and more and more.
Shifting gears a little bit, we want to hit on the impact and evolution of the craft beer bar. Sam, what have you felt Beer Bar's impact has been and continues to be on the growth of the craft brewing industry?
Well, I mentioned earlier that, you know, the bar proposition where you're buying one drink at a time is like the least financially risky for someone trying a new product, and the exponentially awesome reality that if you're going to a place that calls themselves a beer bar, their staff better not be fronting on that and better know their shit. And that usually happens. And to some extent, for better or worse, in a lot of ways, perhaps the pandemic was a bit of a economic Darwinism, in that those that were really had that passion, that tenacity, were the ones that made it through. And so the customers that go there know they're going to get really ensconced in all. Also say the craft bars are great bellwethers for the trends to come, right? If you got a reputation as a great beer destination, you can't just rest on your laurels and look backwards at IRI trends and say, okay, what was selling well in the supermarket down the street from me? Because you know that a lot of the bars and restaurants in your neighborhood that might not be craft beer bars, but you know, every good restaurant now has some craft beer in it, but they're not likely on the cutting edge of what's coming in the beer world. They're usually making safe bets of what's already been established and are proven styles off-prem. So the beer bars are going to be the great sort of risk takers on helping to define what's going to be the next IPA that's out there. And I think customers know that when they're making their decisions of where they're going to go next. And I also love that more and more publicans are really the great ones. I think are really judicious. I think of those on with us today, and you know, like Winking Lizard and others. They're like, okay, I know that I want to use some amount of my chess pieces, i.e. my cold shelf space or my taps, to take risks and do some crazy moves, and then I want some predictable pawns that I know will deliver the expectation. They might not freak someone out as something super new they'd never tried it, but being really deliberate on having some old favorites, whether they're brands or flagships from those brands, but then using some amount of their real estate to take big risks. I see that being more thoughtful than ever as well.
So, Sam, you really summed up the role that craft beer bars have been playing, which is great. I'm going to throw a question to all of our publicans. Thank you for that excellent word. So, craft beer bars have played an integral role in growing the segment, introducing consumers to different craft breweries and styles. And over the years, those relationships have evolved a bit as virtually every brewer opened a tap room. So, what do you see as your role now within the craft ecosystem? And what role do you hope your establishment is filling for beer drinkers? I'm going to start with you, Michael.
So, about 2015, there was an explosion of brewery tap rooms in Chicago. In the city limits, there's 86. In the greater Chicago metropolitan area, there's over 250 breweries with tap rooms. And naturally, that affected us. I mean, we were selling less beer. But we thought a lot about it, and the pandemic then threw some other wrenches in the system. But what we're finding is that our role now is to carry the beers that the tap rooms don't carry. Like the brewery tap rooms, maybe they might have a guest brewery, but it's always going to be a local brewery. So we've kind of, mixed up our 62 draft lines between beers that are like what I call the legacy craft beer makers. The Sierra Nevadas, the New Belgium, the Bells, the Dogfish Head, Allagash, things like that. Because those are not going to be found at tap rooms, even as guest beers. And then we carry some regional favorites. We still carry plenty Belgian beers on tap. We carry some real interesting German beer. And we've long realized that we needed to carry other things. So I've always thought, like, Hopleaf, I think, has the best wine list of any beer bar in the United States. That means that if you have a table of 6 and 4 of them are beer people, those other 2 people that don't drink beer, they have very low expectations when they come into a beer bar. And we blow their minds because they've never seen a wine list like ours. And so we're doing a lot. We're selling a lot of wine. We're selling more cocktails. We have great food. A lot of tap rooms they either don't have food at all, or they have a food truck or something like that. In Illinois, brewery tap rooms until very recently weren't even allowed to carry cider. They weren't allowed to carry wine. They weren't allowed to carry cocktails. So, we tried to fill in that gap, and we've been really successful. So I think that, before we started talking on the air, I was telling Sam, he has a relatively new beer called Hazy O. We put that on tap as soon as we reopened. It's a huge hit. We introduced it to Chicago. I'm thinking that probably people are going to stores and buying it because they had it at Hopleaf. And at first we were probably the only bar in town carrying it. And now I think other bars are saying, oh, I think we better carry that because I think it's blowing out of Hopleaf. So we're able to do that and, evangelize for a new beer that comes from Dogfish Head or Sierra Nevada or Bell's. That's our role. And I think it's more our role now than ever before.
Melissa, how do you think the Good Hops role within the Bay Area craft ecosystem has changed over the past few years?
I think, one of the things that we really missed during COVID and our customers would talk about it and my staff would talk about it is that one of the great things out when you come into the Good Hop is we will talk your face off about beer, and people would be like, hey, what do you have about this? And we're like, let's go to the coolers, and you'd sit up there and like pick out beers and talk about this brewery. And, oh, did you know this brewery makes this? And, we didn't get to do that during COVID because everything's online and people just look at a picture and buy off a description. And so I think what we're starting to see now is people really want to get that back. They want that interaction back. And it's allowing us to, the other shift that we're starting to see is people aren't always sticking to the same style. So I'm bringing in, you know, box and English milds, whereas before COVID, I couldn't sell those at all. People didn't want to take the risk. They didn't want to try that new beer. They're just, I just drink an IPA or I just drink an amber, and that's what I'm sticking to. And so I think that, like as Sam said, you know, that the craft beer bars are kind of the beacon, or the, you know, they'll tell you what's going on. And I think it's super interesting to see now that we get to play with more styles and see people taking those risks. You know, during COVID, people just stuck with what they knew because they needed something secure and safe. And so now people are like, all right, I'll try that, you know, pistachio, marshmallow, almond, banana fruited stout. You know, I'm not even kidding.
You just gave away our next release, Melissa. You just gave away our next release.
Sam, someone beat you to it. I already have it on my shelf.
Oh, geez, that sounds interesting. Selena, how do you see your role having changed as the landscape in craft evolves around you?
That's kind of the same thing, you know, Sam mentioned, is really trying to introduce people to not only the new things that are coming out. Hazy O is also just flies out of the faucet for me too. It's such a great beer. But always keeping those safe things. You know, I sell a lot of whiskey and high-end whiskey too. So just like beer, pre-pandemic, people looking for all these unicorn beers out there, always wanting to try something special. I find myself always trying to remind them of the beautiful, delicious Sierra Nevada Pale Ale or whatever that is always sitting on your shelf and always fresh, and reminding them that, you know, don't forget about those styles and those core brands that really got, you know, started the craft beer industry and moved it all along. So I think that's the biggest role, is to try and do exactly what Sam said, is, you know, I'm probably like 60-40, you know, 60 great, you know, safe things. I even sell beers that are sold at the tap room that are 4 blocks away, and it flies out of the belfry. So I'm lucky that I want to sell everything. I want to support my neighbors, my neighborhood tap rooms too. They're small businesses just like I am. And I also want to kind of feature those new releases and try to talk about craft beer as much as I can, and still educate people along the way.
We've got a question in the chat from a dear friend of Brewbound, Miss Amy Gutierrez of Bevmo. Melissa, does the Good Hop sell hard seltzer?
We do not. I'm holding pretty hard to that as an old school brewer, and I've been in the industry since '96. Yeah, I don't sell it. I actually don't have people come and ask about it either, which is interesting. We do pay attention to what our customers like, and nobody comes in and says, "Where's your hard seltzer?" Oddly, because I know it flies off the shelves everywhere else, but I don't know if they know that we're just kind of old school and we really stick to beer. It took us a while to bring in hard cider and wine, so maybe people just kind of know that's the route we take on everything.
Michael, does the Hop Leaf have hard seltzer?
We do now. You know, we didn't do it at first, and we don't sell very much of it. Very few people ask for it. We have a brewery that's only about 6 blocks away from us, called LeGros Brothers. And it's an all organic brewery. All their malt and hops are organic. And they're doing a small line of organic seltzer, hard seltzers. And I said, well, we'll bring in those. We're not pushing them. It's not really readily obvious that we have them. But if somebody asks me about them, I've got them. And I sell a little bit of it, but I don't really see it ever being a really big part of my business. My customers they really come for beer. If they're not coming for beer, they're coming for wine. And the hard seltzer is almost an afterthought. But you know, we do have the 3 that LeGros Brothers make. Do I drink them? No, I have no interest in them at all. But as these things go, I think their product it meets my standard. I mean, I'm not going to carry anything that I think is crap. And this stuff is not crap. It's just not something it's hard for me to be passionate about it. And I like to carry food, beer, wine, cider, spirits that I'm passionate about. So this is, you know, we also carry like Coca-Cola and stuff. I don't drink Coca-Cola, but we carry it, you know, and sometimes we mix drinks with it. But I feel the same way about hard cider.
Selena, I know during our prep call for this, you explained that you guys have a bit of a different philosophy on hard seltzer. So why don't you tell everybody how you guys approach that particular segment?
We actually have a slew of house-made syrups that we use for cocktails. And so if somebody ever asks for a seltzer, I just make them a fresh one and kind of, you know, ask if they like fruity or tart, or just kind of, again, have a conversation and engage with them and find out what they really want, and just create a hard seltzer in-house for them. And they've been loving them. So I'm going to continue to go that route, because I'm kind of like Michael, that I just don't want to carry them. Or I'm going to be resistant to it. And Melissa, that I'm just going to be resistant to carrying them when I know that I can make I feel like a better and a fresher product, and really kind of tailor it to the person.
Sounds delicious.
Want a better and fresher product. Michael, how has your approach to ordering changed this year compared to others?
Well, when so we knew we were going to reopen April 1st, and I started working on the beer list in February, because a problem that I'm sure Sam can relate to is that all the distributors in Chicago, they had a lot of old beer in their warehouses. So I kind of went past the distributors. I went to the brewery reps and I said, what beer from this brewery that I feel is very important for me to have on tap on April 1st? What can I get that's fresh? And I'm really glad that I started doing this in February, because when we opened April 1st, we probably had the freshest beer we've ever had. I mean, all 62 draft lines were very, very fresh beer. And it was very exciting. And so, you know, I've kind of watched that a lot more carefully post-pandemic, because I wanted to make sure that, you know, some local distributors weren't trying to get rid of some beer that's been sitting around for a year. So I've been very careful. And I've also been doing a lot of pre-ordering. So you know, some breweries are still pretty nervous about putting beer in kegs, because they're afraid, what if things close down again? Then they have to dump all that beer. So I'm willing to say, you know, like Firestone Walker, I said, can you if you send me 8 kegs of DBA, I will buy them no matter what. Even if we close, I'm going to buy them. And so they were willing to send 8 kegs of a brand that they usually don't even sell much in Chicago. And so we were the only ones in town that had it, and it was really fresh. And so it's been a lot more, I've been much more involved with brewery reps. And fortunately, a lot of breweries that I deal with have really good reps in the market, including Dogfish Head with Kelly. He does a great job. I also changed, you know, I'm not carrying as much bottled beer as I used to carry. At one time we had 450 beers in bottles. We don't even have 100 again, and we never will have 450 again. We have about 90. That's enough. It's very well chosen. There's no reason for me to have a lager, a pilsner, an IPA in a bottle or a can. That should be on draft. It should be fresh. What we carry in bottles now is lambics, Flemish sour ales, stuff like that has long shelf life, and you don't find very many places. And so we've really changed that. We've also found large format bottles don't work for us anymore. So I didn't order any, you know, I'd love to sell a 750 of Saison DuPont to a table, but they weren't buying it. So I'm not going that route anymore. But we also found that when we first reopened, there was a great deal of passion for like old favorites. And like was mentioned earlier, Sierra Nevada Pale Ale, I put it on tap to reopen. I hadn't had it on tap for a long time. I've always had a Sierra Nevada beer, but not Pale Ale. Well, I sold about 5 kegs of it, you know, and it's like, oh my God, it's this old friend of mine, you know, that I can't wait to drink again. And the fact that it was super fresh, people, were really impressed by it. So, we did want to represent our favorite breweries, the breweries that we have long relationships with, and we succeeded in that. And customers were happy, and we're happy.
Selena, have you changed your ordering practices, changed up your draft versus package mix much?
Actually, no. When I first opened 7.5 years ago, I probably had 100 package offerings, and then I have since dwindled that down, and I sell very, very little package, if anything. And right now, I only buy maybe 4 different varieties in cans for mystery beers and dealer's choice beers as a special, and they're always legit, delicious beers. And I pretty much sell them sometimes at cost, just because I just want to have a fun thing to give away, to have as a dealer's choice or mystery beer. But usually I just am straight 6 barrels. There's maybe 5 things that I could get in a half barrel because I can move through it quickly enough. But otherwise, pre-pandemic, I was the same thing as Michael. I just asked what was fresh. They know I check collars. They know I'll send stuff back, so they usually don't bother and are pretty upfront of, if I ordered something, they're like, yeah, you don't want to order that right now. I'll let you know when a fresh batch comes in. So it's really just always checking and using our relationships and making sure everything is as fresh as it can be. And that's what goes on.
Melissa, how have you changed up your approach, if at all?
I'm getting to buy more half barrels than I used to because we're moving through beer a little bit faster. And like I said earlier, now I have a Bock on tap. I have some a little bit more riskier beers. And we're definitely seeing like the Pilsners and the lagers. People just want to sit and hang out. They want to be at the bar for longer than I just had 2 beers and I'm pretty drunk. I got to go, so they're hitting the lighter. I'm definitely getting requests for lighter alcohol because people want to stay, they want to stay for 4 hours instead of an hour and a half. And so that's actually been great. I do all the ordering. And to be honest, it's the funnest part of everything that I do with all the entrepreneurial hats that I wear. And so it's, each week it's talking to all the reps and finding out what's new and what's fresh and what's coming. And hey, now we're actually talking about doing beer release events again. We haven't done them in 17 months, So, and for us, we have, like I said, we have 450 cans on the shelves, and we turn the cooler about every month for the stuff that needs to be fresh. Obviously, sours can hang out for a lot longer, and stouts and stuff like that. But our sales mix is 50-50 for cans and packaging and then draft. So we're just honestly moving through a bunch of beer, which is super exciting to me to see. I mean, there's so much beer out there. Even with 450, I feel like I could use 3 or 4 more cooler doors, just to bring in all the interesting stuff that's out there.
Sam, you've got 3 publicans here who have espoused their love of fresh beer and lighter beers. How is this informing the way you're going to approach the on-premise going forward?
Well, I mean, it warms my heart. Now you get it when the woman walked through Melissa's drawer and started crying tears of joy. You can see the passion, Selena, Michael, and Melissa put into this. And when they're calling and asking about the freshness. And so imagine like not being in your favorite pub for a year and then going in and drinking a Firestone or a Sierra that literally came out of those great breweries like 3 weeks before. That's just the ultimate beer lovers and beer cellar lovers moment. So really, really warms my heart. And of course, as it's already been said, certain styles were meant to be drunk super fresh and certain styles age really well. And it's cool to hear how much thoughtfulness is going into that as the 3 publicans are curating their lines. Similarly for us, we were a brewery that at one point, I think 12% of our volume sales and 20% of our revenue was in 750 mil. We don't do any of that anymore. If anything, the kinds of beers we used to sell in that are in still beautiful 375s, like for a half pour, and that's seems to be a more meaningful pour. The other thing I'll say is our own locations, and we do make a seltzer just for on premise. We're not distributing it, but we are canning that to go. Maybe I'd like to take a little of my time and ask about, I know Melissa only sells cider and wine in addition to beer, but just like generally the mix for the three publicans, if we call now, everyone is talking about the fourth category. So if you were to split your pie into four pieces of beer, wine, spirits, and the all other fourth category, whether it's alcoholic kombucha, seltzer, canned cocktail, etc., where are each of you guys in that four-piece pie roughly as a percentage?
I mean, overwhelmingly, beer is king and draft beer is king for me. And then the next level is wine for us. And then the next level below that is cider, and then cocktails, and then is like all else, which includes coffee and tea and soda and non-alcoholic beer, stuff like that. I don't do hard kombucha is not interesting to me. I don't have any call for it. If hard seltzer went away tomorrow, it wouldn't mean anything to me. We're a beer bar, and that's what we love. We happen to, personally, I love drinking wine, so I love to carry really great wine as well. If I just had beer and wine, I could probably survive without even trying to do all the other things. But, a license in Illinois includes selling everything, so we do. Draft beer is king, and the volume we're selling beer right now is just, it's phenomenal. I have 62 draft lines, and I'm selling almost all half barrels, and almost everything sells through a half barrel in a week. So that's a lot of beer.
I would say we're running about the same. We obviously sell more beer than anything else. I'd say probably 95% of what we sell is beer. Next would be cider. And then I'd say that wine and non-alcoholic sodas are probably neck and neck for us. And we don't sell any seltzer. We do a little bit of hard kombucha. Nobody really asked for it, but the hard kombucha sales reps are really emphatic about bringing their product in. They have more energy than any sales reps I've ever met. So we brought some in to see if people were going to touch on it or not. And the jury's still out on that one. But
yeah, the hard kombucha PR reps are the same.
At the Belfry, I'm probably 50% spirits, only because I do have a lot of high end. And then beer would be next. Cider sells pretty well with us. Wine is very little, and I do only serve wine that I can get on draft, just because of how little I sell of it, and I do still want a quality product to go out. And then I don't even have a seltzer category.
Well, I think we're going to land this plane, team. So we're going to do rapid fire around the horn for everybody. I want everybody to end this on a high note and share with us one thing that you are most excited about in the back half of the year. Selena, let's start with you, because I know you're holding your phone and getting a crazy delt workout right now.
The thing I'm most excited about, just hopefully getting back to normal, though. I just saw a thing that said Missouri had the highest number of new cases of COVID. So I'm just still going to stay optimistic that we're just going to keep on moving in the right direction and just keep on selling beer, keep on selling spirits and food and everything else, and being able to engage with everyone.
Michael, what's one thing you're looking forward to?
I'm super optimistic. I'm looking forward to starting to do events again. We actually have an event tonight. We're doing a rollout for the local Revolution Brewery, and we'll see how that goes. That's the first real event we've done. But I am thinking that the rest of the summer is going to be really, really great. I am looking forward to getting back our full food menu and bringing back, getting back to where we're fully staffed. And when we're fully staffed and we're able to, have our full food menu, and I'll feel like things are normal. I have to say, if things go as they have gone since April 1st, we're better than we were in 2019. We're doing as well as we did 5 years ago. I mean, we're booming.
That's great. Melissa, what are you most looking forward to for the rest of the year?
And I can echo what Selena and Michael said, but honestly, and Michael touched on this briefly, we sold out our entire cellar during COVID. I don't have any awesome, beers and bottles that are hiding back there that we get to bring out. And so I'm stoked to build that cellar back up. I think most beer places, in order to survive, were like, oh my God, sell it all, and so all these beautiful, huge beers went out to customers. And so my shelves are empty right now. I'm looking to get that cellar filled back up and then be able to celebrate some of those pretty awesome and really different beers.
That sounds like a really fun and delicious task. Sam, my friend, last word to you. What are you most looking forward to for the back half of this year?
Well, Jess, echoing what a lot of the comments of the three fellow panelists here, the event, like, it's one thing to be back in that space with the people who love what you love and share that love in a real room and clink pints. And for me, it'd be the music events. We're the official Brew Record Store Day, and we've had original acts on our stage every weekend up till COVID for 24 years. And so we just booked one of my favorite bands called Yola Tango, who will do the first national show on our stage in September. I'm going to do a small can release of the 3 tartest fruits in America called Whoa, That's Tangy, and put that release out the night that Yola Tango's on our stage. And I'll be up front saluting the band, but also saluting everyone in the room. And for those about to rock, we salute you. And you guys as panelists rock. Justin, Jess, this has been great fun. So we all made it through a hot fucking mess together, and I salute you guys on what you bring to what you do every day.
Sam, that is a great way to end it, although I'm only slightly disappointed that you're not looking forward to Brew Talks live and in person September 9th at CBC. We'll say that that's mine for the back half of the year. So I am looking forward to that. But that's Brew Talks. This virtual Brew Talks is in the books. It's possibly the last one, and we won't have any more technical issues or anything unless I just go catatonic live and in person. But Sam will be there and Jess will be there, and that's likely not going to happen. Thank you to Sam, Selena, Melissa, and Michael, as well as our first panel of Bart, Danelle, and Jason. Thanks to all of you for tuning in. A big thank you to our audio team. A final thank you to Dogfish Head for presenting Brew Talks, as well as our sponsors, the Reyes Beer Division and Brew One by John I. Haas. We will see you at CBC. Thanks for tuning in.
Cheers, Mike.